The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised. Caution. You are now entering the all-consuming realm of Shay's Paranormal Chat, where the things that are better left unsaid are actually said.
Shut up and sit down.
You're listening to Shay's Paranormal Chat. Paranormal podcasting done Shay's way. Tons of fun.
Dude, seriously?
A bit sarcastic.
Hashtag investigator, not hunter.
But always real.
Hashtag data, not evidence.
Don't get your panties in a twist.
Oh my god, really?
This is real, raw conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Good evening, everybody. TGIF. Welcome to Shay's Paranormal Chat. I hope everybody out there had a great week. Thank God it's Friday. I have to say it twice. That's how much I needed it to be Friday. For many reasons. Not only because we have an awesome guest, but just so everybody doesn't get confused on what show this is, I have my handy-dandy co-host from Exploring the Unknown with me tonight, filling in. We have Rebecca Williamson. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Shay?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on again. I know you fill in sometimes for me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And we're talking about a fun subject tonight, so I can't wait.
I couldn't think of a better co-host to have on to talk about aliens than you. So, this is so
right?
awesome.
I'm excited about this one.
Yes, let's get right into it. Everybody, I am very honored to have on tonight Terry Lovelace. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great, thanks. It's a pleasure to be with Shay and Rebecca tonight. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, thank you. I'm really, really looking forward to this. There's so much to cover. Somewhere down the road there might have to be a part 2 because this show's only an hour long, but...
we're going to have a part 2. I'm afraid.
Yes, it's so intriguing. Well, we're going to leave it there. I just want to give a couple shout-outs real quick to the first people in chat. We have Darren, we have Matt, we have I'm Beholder, and I see a few other likes up there, but I don't see anybody in there saying hello yet. So, let's start off tonight a little different. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I was born in 1955. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. And in 1973, I graduated from high school and enlisted in the United States Air Force and spent the next 6 years on active duty at Whiteman Air Force Base in western Missouri. And I was trained as a medic and an EMT, and I spent my entire 6-year enlistment there. I was a medic and EMT, first responder, worked out of the emergency room, worked night shift mostly, 3 years night shift in the emergency room. And it was in 1977 while I was on active duty that my coworker and I made a camping trip to Devil's Den State Park, which is about 6.5 hours south of the base. And that's when and where we were abducted. I finished my enlistment in 1979 and finished an undergraduate degree in psychology, and then went to Western Michigan for law school, passed the bar, and did some private practice for a little while. Then got an appointment as an assistant attorney general for the United States Territory of American Samoa, the only U.S. territory south of the equator. Absolutely gorgeous place to live and beautiful people. So it was my privilege to serve them. From there, I went to the state of Vermont, where I was also an assistant attorney general, and worked in their board of medical practice, medical stuff, which I like, legal medical stuff. And retired from there in January of 2012 and moved to Dallas, Texas, where we have adult kids and grandkids. I made my career in the law, and for that reason, I really couldn't tell this story. I mean, there are certain professions like, law enforcement, academia, air traffic controllers, that, it's just a taboo topic. Not so much anymore. I think the past 5 years has seen a kind of a change in that. But, while I was working for the government, had I come forward with this story or published a book, I'd have been unemployed. And,
especially back then. I mean, you're right. Things have changed a lot towards looking at the whole alien stuff. That it's becoming more, maybe not popular per se, but more accepted. It
is. People are less dismissive of it, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a good thing. I never had any intention of writing a book or telling this story until 2012. We moved to Dallas in 2012, January 2012, and about 9 months later in October, I got up one morning and I couldn't bear weight on my right leg. And I went to the emergency room. I get all my medical care through the VA. So I went to the emergency room, and they x-rayed my leg and my right leg. And the technician was like, and she takes like 3 shots. And she asked me, have you been in a car accident or something that would account for a piece of metal in your leg? And I'm like, no. And she said, have you ever injured your leg? And I said, maybe a skin knee as a kid, but nothing else. And she said, well, you have some anomalies on your x-rays, and I'm going to ask the radiologist to come down. So she did, and a very perturbed radiologist comes down, obviously not happy to be called down, and he pops my x-ray up, my first x-ray. He had 2 he was looking at, popped the first one up on the view box. I don't know if you guys got copies of those or not.
No, but I saw them on your website.
Yeah, if anybody'd like to see them, they're at terrylovelace.com.
I'll have to check these out.
Yeah, above my knee, there's a square structure about the size of your fingernail with 2 wires attached. And then below my knee, there is what he said is absolutely bone tissue. But it's in the middle of my calf muscle, and it's arranged in a floret pattern.
Wow.
And he's like, he said, I've never seen muscle, or pardon me, I've never seen bone tissue sprout in the middle of a muscle before, much less arrange itself in a symmetrical pattern. So I asked if I could see the x-rays. And when he popped the one up that shows the object above my knee, I was just kind of taken aback. I'll tell you, I was a runner. I started running in 1979 when I got out of the Air Force, and I ran until about 2005 when I had my first heart attack. And every time I would run, and I didn't run marathons, but I'd run 3 or 4 miles a day, but I ran almost every day. And right at the 2-mile mark in my run, every time, without exception, the spot above my knee and to the right would go completely numb. I mean, I could take a safety pen with me on my run, and at the end of the run, I could take it and outline. I could delineate the edges of it. It was perfectly round and about the size of a $50. And it was numb, the same sensation you get at a dental office when they give you a Novocaine if they're going to do dental work. That kind of feeling, kind of numb and kind of itchy, kind of. And I asked my doctor. Yeah, it was weird. I asked my doctor. I said, "What? This is what I experienced." And she's like, "Well, does it interfere with your run?" And I said, "Well, no, not really." And she says, "Well, it's probably some histamic type reaction, whatever that is." And she said, "I wouldn't worry about it." So I didn't. But when I saw these x-rays, it validated that these things had put their hands on me. And that was just really hard for me to process.
Did you instantly know what it was?
Not instantly, but almost. I'd say, I made the connection with the spot that would go numb when I ran. And I asked him, what is this thing? The thing above my knee was really of concern because it was so artificial to the body. And he said, it's obviously a manufactured object because it has plainly has two wires attached to it, and it's perfectly square, and those items don't appear naturally in the human body. And that's when it hit me that, that's probably what they did to me in 1977. So let me go back and I'll give you a quick rundown of our camping trip.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we want to hear about this part for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, we worked the night shift, driving an ambulance, and my friend, I was 22 at the time, newly married, and Tobias was 23. He was married, and we both lived in family NCO housing on the base, and it was a nuclear base then, still is today. It's the home of the B-2 bombers today. Back then, it had Minuteman II ICBM missiles spread out all over the countryside, and then KC-135 tankers and B-52 bombers with nuclear weapons. So it was real tight security, and photography was my hobby. And when you live on a nuclear base, there's not much you can do with a camera. So I wanted to photograph wildlife.
Probably kind of particular about what you take pictures of on the nuclear base.
Oh my God, yeah, they'll lock you up. They have no sense of humor whatsoever. And And I knew I had never been camping in my life. And I knew Toby, I suspected highly, he had never been camping in his life. And I'm like, well, what's the idea with this? And he says, well, you want to take pictures of wildlife. This is the perfect place. And he lived to watch the night sky. He wanted to be an astronomer. He was a gifted mathematician. He wanted to finish a degree in physics and then try to do graduate work in either cosmology or astronomy. And I don't know where that fascination with the night sky came from. I wish I'd had an opportunity to ask him, but I didn't get that chance. So I was kind of reluctant at first, but then I'm like, yeah, you know what? This might be fun. Let's do this. And it was a 6.5-hour drive south of the base. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of nice parks within an hour's drive from here. And he says, yeah, but this place has everything. And, isn't the road trip kind of part of the adventure? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. So in June of 1977, I think it was the 11th, we got up one morning and packed all our stuff, and we drove south. And the object of the exercise for me was to take photographs. And I left my camera at home. Now, my friend... There was just a series of really weird missteps throughout this whole thing. We had planned this really meticulously, and then when the execution came, the wheels just fell off. But but Toby had a camera, so I wasn't without a camera. I just wasn't without. I was without my camera.
Right.
But I also left the camping lantern and hatchet, and I left a bunch of stuff there, and Toby had left a bunch of food stuff behind, and that just wasn't us. I mean, we just weren't that adept. And I don't know, it started off on a weird vibe. We got to the park, and by pre-agreement, we weren't going to stay in the campground because we'd have people to the right of us and people to the left of us, and there's not going to be any wildlife walking around. There's going to be kids and other undesirables running all over the place, and we wanted to be real outdoorsmen, right? We'd never been before, but we thought sure we could be. So we took a paved road to the northwest from the park entrance, and that pavement degraded to gravel, degraded to just two ruts in the road. And we came to a chain across the road with this very sternly worded "Keep out, do not enter" sign. And we thought it was a nature preserve or something, or just a part of the park they didn't want people running around in for whatever reason. We found out later that it was actually, it's not even in Devil's Den State Park. There is a parcel of land cut out that's owned by the federal government. It's federal land owned by the Bureau of Land Management and leased to a private individual. And it's curious. If you go to Google Earth, it's easy to find because it's almost a triangular shaped plateau sitting in the middle of the forest.
Oh.
Still to this day.
You just kind of randomly drove around until you found something like out in the middle of nowhere, or did you know where this spot was?
Toby had heard from some guy that there was this plateau, and he thought, because he wanted to watch the night sky, he thought he could see, the night sky without any light pollution whatsoever, and that would be, his reason for the trip. And then during the day, I can photograph wildlife, it's something for everybody, right?
Right. Sounds like it anyway.
So it's weird. I mean, in retrospect, it really was almost like we were keeping an appointment. You could not see the top of this plateau because the top of the plateau was level with the treetops from the surrounding forest. And somebody goes up there with a tractor, I'm told, and with a brush hog or some kind of big mechanical thing. They pull behind a tractor, a farm tractor, and they clear cut that property to this day. I took the aerial photo from Google Earth and I posted it on my Facebook page. And this follower from Alabama who owns a landscape company messages me and says, "Man, somebody cuts that with a tractor." He says, "I can see the tractor tread marks in the ground, and they keep that cut to about 6 inches." And there's no paved road up there; it's just a dirt road that goes up to this place. I had never bothered to look for it because the place should be covered with 40-year-old mature trees by now, and it's not.
It's not.
For some reason, for 50 years, 60 years, whatever, the United States government sees fit to pay the bill to pay somebody to go up there and burn the gas and clear cut this top of this plateau that's in the middle of nowhere.
Interesting.
So go figure. So anyway, there was a chain across the road, so I thought, well, we'll turn around and see if we can find another way. And my friend on the passenger side, Toby, he's like, no, man, wait, stop the car, I got this. He was observant enough to see that what the Rangers did was they had just made a noose out of the chain and used a padlock to close it, and then took that noose and draped it over the opposing post on a nail. So he hops out of the car and just picks it up and drops it. The chain falls to the ground. We're like, cool, we're in, And we felt like Lewis and Clark, right? So,
your area, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was ours. And we drove in, and, he made about a dozen calls, whether to go left or go right. And he did. He had an unerring sense of direction. I had no sense of direction whatsoever, but he had a good sense of direction. But he led us right to the plateau. We didn't make a single wrong turn. And, looking back at it, the odds of that happening are pretty slim. Or we were just real lucky.
Or you were supposed to be there.
Or we were supposed to be there. That's right. We were keeping an appointment. It really felt that way. Like I say, looking back at it.
Yeah.
When we got to the base of the thing, and there was this sharp dirt road that went straight up. And I got my 66 Impala all the way up, and onto this plateau. And it was just, we crested this plateau, and the place was just gorgeous. I mean, it was just beautiful, big open meadow.
Up above the trees like that on a plateau, I bet it was gorgeous.
Oh, yeah, it was cool. I mean, we walked around the perimeter of it. Before I'd seen the aerial photographs, in my book, Incident at Devil's Den, I describe it as being horseshoe-shaped. But seeing the aerial photos, it really is more triangular-shaped. And we set up our little campsite, and we had a $10 tent from Kmart and a couple of blow-up air mattresses. We swiped some blankets from the hospital. And had a cooler full of food and just about everything we needed. And we did all the fun stuff you do in camping because it was all new to us, right? And I built a campfire. and Toby set up the tent. And, we had just a pleasant afternoon and evening. And it's about 9 o'clock at night. And, we were tired, but, we were 22. We were in good shape. We were used to working a night shift, so neither one of us should have been sleepy. And we had the campfire in the middle, and then we had our air mattress on either side. So we're kind of talking across the campfire. And we're just kind of talking and laughing and having a good time. And there came a lull in our conversation. And I noticed that I had to raise my voice to be heard because the crickets, the tree frogs, all the stuff in the forest that makes noise at night was so loud that we had difficulty hearing one another. And that was suddenly, and this sounds cliche, I know, but it's true, and it went dead silent. I mean, it went like, I could hear the fire crackle, but if it hadn't been for that, it'd been like being in a sound booth. It was that quiet. And it was an abrupt change. And it unnerved me. And I asked my friend, like he's going to know, but I asked him anyway, is this normal? And he's like, yeah, look, we've been laughing and cutting up. We've just quieted them. They'll come back. Don't worry about the bugs. They'll come back. And I'm like, okay. But I'm still kind of spooked by the whole thing. And we go back to our conversation, and we're just talking, and I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed. And my friend is fixated on something over his left shoulder, which would have been looking at the western horizon. And I'm about to ask him, what are you looking at? When he asked me, he says, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I'm like, what lights? I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere. It's a little more built up now, but I'll tell you, in 1977, there was nothing anywhere around. So I couldn't see them at first because his torso was in the way from where I'm sitting, so I had to stand up. And on the western horizon, there were these three bright little stars in a triangle. And they sat above the horizon, and they were too far above the horizon to have been lights like from a train or from a parking lot or something. So I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, that could be maybe an airplane flying in our direction, because it definitely wasn't on the ground. And I thought maybe it's flying in our direction and headed straight for us so that we can't see motion or movement until it varies its course by a degree or two, and then it'll look like it's moving. But I didn't know any kind of aircraft that had that triangular or that, three light configuration. It didn't make sense. So we're talking about it, and while we're watching this thing, it moves, and it rotated like it was on an axis and turned about 120 degrees to the right and aligned the base of the triangle parallel with the horizon. So there was an apex pointing up. And as soon as it did that, it took off and started to go up into the sky. And it was the strangest thing that as soon as it started to go up, I felt this sensation of calm wash over me. Kind of sedation. I felt sedated. I also felt this weird kind of disinterest. I was interested in watching it, but our emotions were muted. I mean, they were inappropriate to what we were seeing. We should have been freaked out. We should have been scared. We should have been something. And we were kind of nothing, I don't get that. But I think it speaks to the level of influence that these things can have over us. Because
almost like a hypnotizing effect, like maybe you were kind of hypnotized in a way. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of what it sounds like, almost.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't natural, and it felt unnatural. So
either hypnotized or being controlled. But hypnotized was instantly what I thought. But yeah, one or the other.
One or the other, yeah. So while we're watching this thing, it climbs up into the sky, and we could see that it was one solid object because it was a beautiful night. There were a trillion stars out, no light pollution. And as this thing would move across fields of stars, they would black out for a minute and then blinked back on as the thing moved past them. So we knew we were looking at one solid object and not three objects moving in unison. So while we watched, it reached a ceiling, still kind of oriented with the point of the triangle up. And I'm guessing 10,000, 12,000 feet. I don't know. I have no point of reference, but that's what I would guess. Just an assumption. And it stopped for a second, and then it reoriented itself flat where it was parallel with the ground, and then pointed the nose, the apex of the triangle, down and in our direction. Wow. And then it started this slow glide down. And we watched it, and it grew bigger because the points of light, they always remained equidistant to one another, but they grew further apart. And still, we had no emotion, no reaction. There's no conversation. We're just watching this thing. And as it descended, it did this weird tumbling thing where the point of the triangle would go underneath, and it would do a complete somersault. And it did that twice. And it gave me, and I don't know where this thought come from, maybe it's just an assumption on my part, but I felt like they were showing us that. I felt like that was done for our benefit, to kind of say, look, this isn't just out of control. We're moving, it's moving with purpose and intent, and it's definitely moving in our direction. And we're still just laid back on these air mattresses watching this thing, and there's, like I say, there's no conversation to speak of between us.
So how much time has gone by since you first noticed it until this point?
Less than 15 minutes.
Okay. Darren was asking questions.
Having a conversation about something coming towards you like that is unnatural. I mean, you'd be looking at your buddy going, "What? Do you see this?"
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we weren't accustomed to being in the middle of the woods at night. We were two city kids. I mean, I think we should have been scared out of our wits, but we weren't, and I don't get it.
Yeah, that is odd.
So we watched this thing glide in, and it hit the horizon at, I think, about 5,000 feet above the meadow, and then descended a little bit more, and came to a stop directly over this meadow. And thank God we had camped off to the side by the tree line. Had we camped in the middle of this meadow where I wanted to camp, this thing had been right over us. And Toby was insistent that we camp off to the side, and I'm so glad we did. And like I say, it parked right over this meadow at about 3,000 feet, and as soon as it stopped, right from underneath the thing and in the center, it shot down a beam of light. And this was a white light. It had the characteristic of like a high-power searchlight that cuts through fog, if you're near a lake or an ocean at fog, when there's dense fog. So it was this visible column of white light, but of course there was no fog. I mean, it was just crystal clear. But you could see this. It was visible. And it landed square in the middle of our campfire and stayed there for about 60 seconds, and then just like someone hits a switch, it turns off. And as soon as that turned off, another light shot down from the same spot, and this was a laser. Lasers were kind of new in 1977. I'd seen them on television, but at this point I'd never seen one in real life. And I recognized it for what it was. And it was about the diameter of a lead pencil, and it was a weird color. It was kind of a bluish purple. And it would land in one spot at our campsite, stay there for like a tenth of a second, and then reappear in another spot. So that 10 times a second, this thing is dancing all over our campsite. And it landed on everything that we brought with us, including ourselves. I mean, it hit my car. It hit me in the chest a couple of times. I didn't feel anything. But it hit the tent. It hit Toby's backpack. It hit his Coleman cooler. It hit him multiple times. So everything that we brought with us, this laser, hit several times, because this lasted about 3 minutes. And I had the feeling that, it was obvious this thing was scanning us. I mean,
Darren just asked that in the chat, and I was going to ask you, so, yep.
Yeah, that's what it brought to my mind was being scanned.
It did. It felt like this thing's checking us out, And again, we had no fear.
Which is the oddest part of the story.
It is crazy. It makes no sense. And it gets weirder. That light shut off. And then we transitioned from being, we were in this weird kind of, I wouldn't call it apathetic, but I'd say mildly disinterested. I felt detached or dissociated somehow. I felt more like I was a observer than a participant in this thing.
Oh,
weird. It was in a weird place.
That makes sense.
So as soon as this laser light cut off, that sedated feeling transitioned to sleepy. And I mean sleepy. If you've ever been so tired, all you wanted to do is lay your head down and go to sleep. That's how I felt. And my friend felt the same way. And he stood up, and one of the few things that he said, he stood up and he said, well, show's over. And he picked up his air mattress, went over and threw it in the tent, and fell on top of it and was out. And
now that's just bizarre.
Yeah, with this thing 3,000 feet over our heads, right?
Yeah.
And I did the same. I picked up my air mattress and I threw it in. And I didn't bother to take off my shirt. I was wearing combat boots. I left them on, laced all the way up. And that comes into play in a minute. I'll get to that. And I fell on top of the air mattress, and I was, I don't think I was asleep. I think I was unconscious. Because that sometime during that night, that's when they took us.
Like you were put to sleep.
We were put to sleep, no question. Yes. We were anesthetized, like a lion on a Serengeti plain before they tagged them, is what I think.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what the whole experience sounds like. Like they kind of did like a hypnosis, mind control type thing on you, and then you were put to sleep.
Yes. We both wore nice watches. We had nice wind-up mechanical watches because, we were EMTs. It was integral to the job to have a decent, reliable watch, and we had both of our watches synchronized because we used them on the job. And my watch stopped at 2:40. It was a nice Elgin watch, never worked again. And my friend's watch stopped at 2:41.
So this started at 9:30, somewhere in there?
Yeah, about 9:30 is when we ended up crashing, yeah.
So
all of this played out in about 30 minutes.
So 9:30, so from 9:30 to 2:40, I wonder.
Well, that's not when we woke up.
Right, but your watch stopped at 2:40, so I'm wondering what the relevance of that is.
I don't know. I don't know if 240 was when they took us, or if 240 was. I talked to a guy. Matter of fact, watches has kind of become a hobby of mine. I had an interest in them, and I found out that mechanical watches will break if they're subjected to a magnetic field. So if you have a wind-up mechanical watch and you get it near, a big piece of industrial machinery or something, that can kill it. So, and ours were dead. I wish I'd saved my watch, but I didn't.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I woke up. Looking back at it, it was about an hour before daylight, but I had no idea what time it was when I woke up. But I woke up and there were these flashing yellow and white, orange and maybe greenish lights, and they were flashing at odd intervals, and they were flashing through that tent, and they were just insanely bright. They would light up the inside of that tent like crazy, coming through the canvas of the tent. And I wake up and I don't have my wits about me. I'm really kind of out of it, and I'm thinking, where am I? Oh yeah, I'm camping with Toby, that's right. And I see these lights, and I'm trying to think about it logically, and I'm thinking, these are probably like the overhead lights of a park ranger's truck there to kick us out of the park. What I thought.
Right. I could see that. I could see where that would be a thought.
Yeah. And I wasn't frightened. I wasn't concerned. And I sat up, and I noticed that my boots had been unlaced all the way down. And I knew that I didn't do that. And I would never have gone to sleep like that. I would have left them laced up all the way to the top, which is what I know that I did, or I'd taken them off. But I wouldn't have left them like that. That's a trip hazard. I mean,
right.
I needed to run for something. It didn't make sense. And I was annoyed more than anything. And I pulled my boot off, and my sock is on sideways. And that really confuses me because, one of the things they drill into you in the military was to take care of your feet, and I just would never have done that. So, but again, I'm not fearful. I'm just annoyed. And I took them off and I put them back on, laced them up to the top. And then I turned my attention to my friend, who I really can't see until there's a flash of light. Then I get a glimpse of him for a millisecond. And he's on his knees, and he's looking out the flap on his side of the tent, and he's looking out into the meadow. And in one of these flashes of bright light, I could see tears down the right side of his face. And he had very dark skin. He was African American, and the saline in his tears would fluoresce against his skin and light up. So I could see these white streaks down his face whenever the lights would go off, and that kind of got me upset. That kind of worried me because I could not imagine what would make this guy cry. That was pretty upsetting. And I asked him, because I'm still thinking park rangers, right? I'm like, Toby, man, what is it? Who's out there? Is it park rangers? Who's out there? And all he said to me was, in the universal finger across the lips thing, I think they're still out there. And I'm like, who's still out there? And he's not answering me. And so I get to my knees, and I'm fully expecting to see park rangers out there. And I pull back my flap of the tent just about 2 inches, and I'm peeking out. And what I saw was just, the reason these lights were so bright is that thing that had been 3,000 feet over the meadow when we went to sleep had descended. And now it's just 30 feet over the top of the meadow. And it has these bright lights on each point of the triangle had lights on it that were flashing. That's where the light was coming from. And it was so bright because the thing had descended and was so close to us. And the second thing I noticed was what I took to be a dozen or maybe 15 kids. And I'm like, Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here? We're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. And he said, man, Terry, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They're not human beings. And he said, don't you remember they took us and they hurt us? And when he said that, my fear level went from about a 2 to 10 plus.
Right.
And I was just terrified. And I could see them just in silhouette until the lights would flash. And then I'd get a millisecond of a look at them. And they were gray, and I don't know if that was their natural skin color or if they were wearing gray garments of some kind. They were about 3 foot tall. They all looked the same. They had heads that were disproportionately large for their bodies, spindly torsos, very much like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Spielberg released that movie in November, just about, a few months after our experience. And I didn't see that movie until about 15 years later, because I don't watch space movies. I don't sleep well if I do. But there's a scene in that movie toward the end where a ramp goes down and they show like little gray alien beings walking down the ramp, and there's like a fog around them. And they look very much like that. And they walked with a really weird gait. They walked like their legs were hinged to move backward an inch or two with every step. So it was the illusion like they were dragging their rear leg behind them with each step. And while we're watching, from underneath this thing, again, there came a bright white light, and it was that visible column of white light, and it's about 30 feet in diameter, because it's about as wide as this thing is tall off the floor of the meadow. And it just flips on like someone hit a switch. And as soon as that did, these dozen or 15 or so, I didn't count them, I wish I had, little guys that are scattered all over the meadow are paired up in like twos and threes. And as soon as that light kicked on, they all turned their attention toward it. And they didn't rush or run, but they all just started to walk in the direction of this column of white light. And they would enter it in pairs or in threes. And then we watched, like, the first two little guys stepped into it, and they pixelated out and were gone. They just dissolved. It was very much like the old Star Trek thing, and I'm not a sci-fi person, so, I mean, I remember Star Trek from the 60s, and, you know, they had the transponder, transformer, whatever that was, yeah, that thing. And the TV would show them kind of pixelate out, and this was very, very similar to that. It took about 20 seconds for them to just evaporate.
Wow.
And when the last two little guys were gone, that light shut off. And we were absolutely scared to death. I mean, I was afraid that we were going to cough or sneeze or do something and draw their attention, and they would come over and visit us or something. And we had no way of knowing, you know, they were long done with us, you know.
So at this point, you still have no memory of what had happened, but he did.
No, you know what happened was this. Remember I said my fear level went from 2 to 10. When Toby said, he said the words, "Don't you remember? They took us and they hurt us." When he said those words, I had flashes of memory. I mean, just little fragments of memory of being inside that thing. Mm-hmm. And those memories have been the focus of nightmares for 44 years now.
Probably PTSD.
Oh, I've been diagnosed with it twice.
Oh, I'm sure.
In the 80s and in the 90s. And they diagnosed me as PTSD, etiology unknown, because I wasn't about to tell. I wasn't about to tell anybody, you know, that, yeah, I saw a UFO the size of Walmart in 1977, and I think that's where I got the phobia from. But I left there definitely traumatized. I'll tell you, I didn't want to leave the tent. You know, all I had over my head was a piece of canvas. But I told my friend, I said, man, I'm not leaving this tent until morning. You know, I'm not going anywhere till the sun comes up. I mean, I just had a piece of canvas over my head, but I felt like it gave me cover. And I didn't want to be out exposed and run across the 60 feet of open, you know. To this day, I will not walk across an open field. I'll walk a mile and a half around to get to the other side, but I won't cut across an open field. I feel vulnerable. I'll have a panic attack. Out in the open, yeah. Yep. So, you know, I still sleep with a light on. You know, I sleep with I wear a T-shirt. I have an iPhone with a shielded case to keep the EMF off of my heart, and I sleep with this in my pocket and earbuds, and I listen to meditative tapes or meditative apps now at night. And so I don't hear the ambient noises of the house. It doesn't freak me out. Mm. The other thing, PTSD-wise, I've experienced was a couple of times I've been to, well, when we used to have malls and we used to shop in malls. I was Christmas shopping one year, and I turned a corner, and there was this like a newly opened store that wasn't set up yet, and they had a table, and they had these naked feminine mannequins from the waist up only, and they were set on these tables, like they were going to dress them in blouses or something, and wigs eventually, and they're, you know, posed in different positions, and I just walked around the corner, and I saw that, and for some reason, that freaked me out, and I still feel uncomfortable looking at mannequins. I mean, if they're dressed, they look more like a human or something, but just the naked mannequin is just creeps me out. So.
Huh. Interesting. So after all this, so did you guys talk about it, or was it just like, okay, we're just going to forget this ever happened?
You know, this is the strangest thing to me. A couple of things happened. Well, obviously we sat in the tent like two scared 10-year-olds for about 40 minutes, and then eventually just darted to the car and got out of there. And it's amazing Toby was able to navigate me out of there in the dark through these woods, but he did. And we were both hurt. I suffered. We were both burned. I had like the worst sunburn I'd ever had in my life, but I never blistered and I never peeled.
Was it like radiation?
That's what I think. Yeah, I mean, I've got no way to prove that.
Right.
I also had what the doctors called flash burns to my eyes. It's the kind of injury an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that hood whenever they were welding. And it's a sunburn to the cornea of your eye, and it hurts. It feels like you have sand in your eyes. And it makes you real photophobic. So when the sun came up shortly after we hit the pavement, it really hurt. So it was a long drive back. It was a long, unpleasant drive back. And, you know, whatever they did to me, they gave a double measure to my friend because he was just miserable. And he was kind of curled up in the big, long bench seat of my Impala. He's curled up in the fetal position. He was kind of a smaller guy. And he was really hurting. And we made a pact. We made an agreement that we would never tell anyone that we saw a UFO. I mean, ethically, we had the issue of we can't lie.
Right.
So we decided that this would be our plan, that we would tell them that, truthfully, that we went to bed feeling odd, feeling weird. That was definitely true.
Right.
And that we woke up feeling sick, and that was true, and decided to come back. And, you know, we left everything there. That's how scared we were. I took my wallet and my car keys. Toby left his backpack, his Coleman cooler, the tent, everything. We left there.
Well, kind of ruins camping trips. Again, I'm probably not going to again.
You know, that's the other odd thing is that Toby had his camera in his backpack within reach. I mean, it was a foot away from him while he's laying there on the air mattress. And, you know, the thought of taking a picture of this thing never crossed my mind or his.
Huh. That's interesting.
And again, I think that speaks to some level of influence over us because being an amateur photographer, you know, I had a little dark room set up. I developed black and white prints. So, I mean, I had been all over this. I mean, you know how people that are into photography are just annoying and they want to take pictures of everything. Well, you know, I was that guy. I was doing, you know, so I mean, I don't get it.
Sounds like you were too scared and stunned to do anything but just look, just watch.
Yeah, but you know, the weird thing was I didn't feel scared watching this thing. I really didn't have any fear whatsoever until Toby said those words, don't you remember they took us and they hurt us? And I got a flash of being inside that thing. And
so did you have injuries to your leg at this point, or did you notice?
No injuries to my leg whatsoever. And that was another thing that freaked out the radiologist in 2012. The radiologist said, well, there should be a scar on your leg. And he insisted on looking at my leg. Because he said, you know, you can't put something this size, this deep into fascia and tissue. You know, you violate the integrity of the skin, there's going to be a scar there. And I'm like, Doc, I don't have a scar there. And he was bound and determined to prove me wrong. And when he couldn't find a scar, he was visibly upset. And I said, well, let me ask you, Doc, how often is it that you see a foreign object in the human body like this and there not be a corresponding scar? And he said, never. He said, I've been a radiologist 23 years, and I've never seen this before. He says, I have no way to account for this thing being inside of you. I don't know how it got in there.
I as well have a foreign metal object in my leg. Not to the extent that yours is. Mine looks like a little pin, but I have had problems with my legs and had x-rays. And so I know what you went through with the radiologist because they were totally freaking out. Did you have surgery on your leg? No, I did not. And they were just 100 questions. And I'm like, no, you know, and yeah.
That was the drill. And you still have it in you?
Yeah, I still have it in me.
Do you still have yours in you? Or did you take it out?
No, the ones below my leg are still there.
Okay.
That foreign object that looked like a piece of electronic device, I wanted it out of there the next day after I saw it on X-ray in 2012.
Legs to that extent, yeah.
Well, the problem that I had was this: is that I had a regular cardiologist. I went to see a surgeon. Surgeon looks at the X-rays, a young guy, and he's like, "Cool, yeah, I'll take this out for you." And I said, but I need it done under a forensic protocol. I said, I need a chain of custody to show that you took it out, you sign off, you put it in an envelope, and then you give it to either me if I'm awake or to my agent who will be there to accept possession of it. Because I wanted to be sure that, and I was real hopeful that I could use it as part of my book and have physical possession of it.
Right.
And it didn't work out that way. I went to the surgeon said, all you need to do, he says, I see you have a cardiac history. He says, you got to get a cardiac clearance letter from your cardiologist and we're good to go. And I didn't expect any problem, although I was a little worried because I'd had 3 heart attacks, a quadruple bypass, and a stent at this point. And
yeah, I can see where, they might need a cardiologist clearance. That makes sense.
Yes. And I went to my cardiologist and I said, look, I really want to get this thing out of my leg yesterday. And she was kind, but she was firm. And she said, look, I got 50,000 other vets out there. They got a piece of metal in them from Iraq or Korea or someplace. And they wanted it out yesterday too. What's that?
Isn't that like probably shrapnel? That yours isn't. Yours is something else.
Mine's not shrapnel.
Yeah, but I meant the other people they were talking about.
Yeah, and they don't take those out. And she says,
to take out mine.
Nope. Well, yeah. And in a way, I was really torn. In one way, I wanted it out of my body, and on the other hand, maybe I didn't. I don't know. But I couldn't. I talked to 5 cardiologists, 3 within the VA system and 2 outside, and they told me the standard of care is that if you've got this thing in your body and it's not causing you any harm, it's a risk versus benefit analysis. And if that's been in there since 1977, the risk of anesthesia and the risk of infection, taking it out, outweighs the benefit of removing the thing, no matter how weird it is. And I was told the standard of care in this country, medical standard of care, is that
outweigh.
No.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah, we don't do that. But I found a surgeon in Tijuana who offered to do it for me, because in Mexico they don't follow the United States.
They follow the money.
That's right. Yeah. So and bring cash.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I was going to have it removed in December of 2017. And ET came and took it out. The thing above my knee.
It was just gone?
I woke up on the morning of November 17th of 2017, and I had 2 puncture wounds at the top of both legs. I don't know why both legs. My guess is I probably had an implant in the left leg that never got found. But on my website, I believe there are pictures. In the back of the book, I know there are pictures. I woke up with these deep puncture wounds that were about 1/8 of an inch wide, but there was absolutely no bleeding, no blood whatsoever. And within about 36 hours, there was this bruising pattern around the puncture wound. And I woke up and I told my wife, I said, I think they came and took that thing out of my leg. And she said, well, we'll get an x-ray. And I did. I found a chiropractor who was willing to give me an x-ray. As a matter of fact, when I showed him copies of my x-rays that I had on copy paper, I think this guy was an experiencer, or in his practice, he'd seen this before. Because he said, I'll write you a script for an x-ray and I'll pay for it. He said, you just promise in your book you won't use the name of my clinic or my name in your book. And I said, deal, and I've kept my part of the bargain. And he didn't have an x-ray machine, but he sent me to a freestanding radiology clinic about a mile down the road. And I got an x-ray, and as soon as I got to my car, I pulled it out of the big envelope and I held it up to the sunshine, and sure enough, the thing above my knee was gone. So I dropped the x-rays off at his office, and he called me up and he said, well, you saw the thing that you had, he said, you saw the thing that they put in your body is gone. And I said, yeah, I did. And he says, well, did you see that they left something in you? And I'm like, no, I don't know where to look. And he says, well, stop by. I'll show you. So I got in my car and I drove there immediately. And I had to wait a minute. He was seeing patients, but he got me in. And he showed me on x-ray film. There's a picture of it in the back of my book, but it didn't turn out well. You can see it crystal clear on if I held the x-ray up to a light source. But in the photograph, there's a circle around it. It's about maybe a centimeter, a little longer. There are two tiny parallel wires right next to one another. And the one is kind of bent like that at the end. And you can see them clear as day, and they're in the middle of my thigh, right next to my femur. And I said, Doc, let me ask you this. It sounds like you know something about these things. If they're so much more intelligent than we are, why would they be so inept as to leave two wires in my body? And he said, you don't get it. They don't make mistakes. He said, what they did was they probably gave you an upgrade. He said, that's probably the 2017 model of the 1977 version they took out of you.
Right.
So, yeah,
My question is, did you continue to have problems with your leg? Was it, you said you woke up and it was not.
No. I couldn't bear weight on my leg because I had what's called a Baker's cyst. The pain that I had in my right leg was absolutely unrelated to the implants in any way, shape, or form.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Huh.
So, and the Baker's cyst is always benign. It's kind of a pain for about 2 weeks, and then they always resolve on their own.
And if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have known, right?
I would have never known.
Wow.
And that's why 2012 was such an epiphany, and that's when I decided I want to talk about this, and I was really reluctant to do that because I felt guilty talking about it. I felt like I was giving away a family secret or violating some kind of fiduciary trust. It didn't feel.
Have you talked to Toby since you started telling people?
Toby is a half an hour story, and I'd love to tell you about it. Just real quick, something had changed between us. Our relationship was different. Normally two people have an experience like this. You want to validate it with one another. You want to talk about it. You want to say, man, you see what I saw? And we didn't do that at all. We made the pact, the agreement that we wouldn't tell anyone we saw a UFO. But other than that, there was no conversation on the way home. It was a long 6.5 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I have trouble.
Since you've written the book, have you been in contact with him at all?
No, he passed away in 2007.
Oh, gotcha. That's too bad.
Yeah, he never got over this event. There's kind of a backstory, but he declined. I had my struggles too, to be honest with you.
PTSD and all that. Yeah. Something like that changes you.
It does. That's well said. I think we went down there as teenagers and we left there as adults.
They say with any form of PTSD, the listeners can't see me, but you two can. They say with any type of PTSD, the point of the traumatic event is here, and you no longer go on this. It totally changes your path. It totally changes who you are, and part of you always stays there. So it throws you off. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm not really.
I know exactly what you're trying to say, because here's the way I interpreted it. I had the event, and then from that event, I had this level of anxiety. And then I would have an increase. I'd have what I first thought were just intrusive thoughts, but they were actually flashbacks. So I'd be at this level, then I'd have a horrible nightmare or something, and it would go up. But then I wouldn't go back to that baseline. My anxiety and my PTSD symptoms would stay at that new level until there was another event, another nightmare, another mannequin in the store window, something, and then it would ratchet up another notch. So that cumulatively over the years, it's like the PTSD worsens.
Yep.
So.
Well, our time is actually up. I really would love to have you back sometime. to finish this, because like we knew right from the get-go that we weren't going to be able to fit it all in. But before we go, is there anything that you hadn't said that you want to say?
Yeah, briefly, I would like to say that I have 2 books.
Yep.
Incident at Devil's Den, and then there's the second book, Devil's Den: The Reckoning, that I just published in December. Both were #1 bestsellers on Amazon. Incident at Devil's Den has paperback with photos in the back, just like The Reckoning. There's a Kindle version for each. And for Incident at Devil's Den, I recorded a audiobook. It's on Audible and on Amazon. In my own voice, I wanted to tell the story. So.
Oh, nice.
That's very nice.
Yeah. And what you want to put out any social media and your website information?
Yes, my website is terrylovelace.com. I'm on Facebook at Incident at Devil's Den, Devil's Den Radio. And I have a new podcast. We just made our 5th or 6th episode, and it's just called Devil's Den Podcast.
And where can they find it?
It's on YouTube.
Awesome.
And go check it out, please. Like and subscribe. You know the routine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We just started it, so we're trying to get it off the ground. That'd be appreciated very much.
Sounds interesting. It really does. And this has been totally a fascinating story.
Yeah, it went by so quick.
It did.
There's so much more to talk about, too.
Yes,
I
there
know,
is.
I'll quiz you more about this leg thing, but maybe next time.
Yeah.
Next time, so.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Terry, for sharing your story with me, the listeners, and Rebecca. We really appreciate it. And you're welcome back anytime. And there might have to be a part 3, because we didn't even touch this. We just barely touched the surface of this.
4 hours.
Yeah.
It takes for me to tell this. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see that. Because it's a fascinating story, and there's a lot to it. It's very interesting.
Very interesting.
Shoot me an email anytime. I'd love to come back, and thank you for your hospitality. I enjoyed myself very much.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening, whether you're listening live or in
Love your cat.
In the chat. Whoops, sorry, guys. If you're listening live, thank you very much. Sorry, we were having a side conversation there. Before we go, one more quick second. We have a live episode of... I know, that threw me all off. You just had to point out your cat. It threw me off, though. Our very first live episode of Exploring the Unknown is Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know what we're talking about yet, but we'll find something good. So if you have like an article you want to talk to us about, let us know.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking. Maybe take a few questions. We'll figure something out. I really did squirrel, Matt. I know.
Hey. They can't see what's going on, but my large cat came up and sat right beside my head towards the end there.
Yep. It just totally threw me off because they can't see this, but I was like, my cat's in here? And I was turning around trying to look to find out where the cat is, but all right, guys. Thank you. Again, thank you very much for listening, whether it's now or later. Catch us Sunday live on Exploring the Unknown, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. And have a great weekend. Till then.